Hello viewers and welcome to Novus Talks with me, your host, Novus Scorvius. And I know it's been a while since I uploaded my review of Metroid Prime 4. And truth be told, I originally planned to follow that up with more videos rather quickly. But what ended up happening is I found myself in a weird bit of a position because, as anyone who watched my review knows, I liked the game. I enjoyed it a lot. But there was a lot of problems with the game. Many plot holes and story details that just were non-existent. Base gameplay was fun, but didn't do anything new. And it left me in this kind of dour mood around talking about the game even. So that's why it's taken me this long to really figure out where I go from here. Now that it's been over 2 months since the game released, the conversation now turns to what's next? What is the future of the Metroid franchise? Because 2026 is the 40th anniversary. And Nintendo probably won't celebrate it because outside of Metroid Dread, they've never really celebrated Metroid anniversaries. Hell, they don't even celebrate Zelda's anniversary, so I wouldn't expect much from them. But at the same time, it's been 5 years since Metroid Dread, which means Metroid 6 should be near completion, right? And that's the thing. It probably is near completion, but that doesn't mean it's near release. Because as we know, as we found out the last couple of years, Nintendo loves to finish games and then wait a year or two afterwards before releasing them. So like Metroid 6 could be finished this year and they might release it in 2028. Like, it's an actual possibility. So that leaves the 2D side of things kind of funky in a way. I want to believe we'll see the game this year, but on the other hand, knowing Nintendo, knowing the history of this franchise, I feel like the game, even if it's done, like, we're not going to see it until next year even. I really believe that that's what's going to happen, just based on evidence and past evidence. And so, okay, what about Metroid Prime, right? It sounds so ridiculous to say, but we just got Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. So Metroid Prime 5, when does it happen? Does it even happen? And, I've said for years, I've always believed they would do a trilogy. And that's a fact that's basically been confirmed again and again. Tanabe himself even said he envisioned Prime 4 as the start of the Silux trilogy. But then at the same time, he's now retired. And despite previous rumors saying Prime 5 was in development, he claims it's not in development yet. So whether or not it's in development, it means that if Prime 5 even happens, we'll be waiting till 2030 at earliest, right? Sure, they could get it done quicker because of, everything they learned on Prime 4, but after the marketing fiasco of Prime 4's announcements, they're not going to even mention Prime 5 until that game is, due to release. Obviously, Prime 4 ended in a way that leaves it open for a fifth game. But at the same time, it's weird because it's the first Metroid Prime game outside of Hunters that doesn't end on a cliffhanger. Metroid Prime 4 doesn't end on a cliffhanger. If you think about it, it ends quite conclusively. Whereas, Prime 1, cliffhanger ending, and Metroid Prime got reincarnated with the Phazon suit. And we see in Prime 2, that's Dark Samus. Prime 2's cliffhanger ending. Dark Samus survived the collapse of Dark Aether. Prime 3's cliffhanger ending, which we all know so well at this point. Silux. And the same with Federation Force. So Prime 4 feels like a weird enigma in that regard. Another wrench in the whole thing is that because Prime 4's story was so bare bones and non-existent, it's hard to get excited for Prime 5. Obviously, I take it and I want it, but at the same time, it's like there's nothing. Prime 4 didn't hook me, with story potential for a sequel. So, yeah, I don't know about you, but this is all a long-winded way of me saying Metroid feels like it's in this weird position because I strongly want to believe we'll see Metroid 6 this year. And by the way, we know the next 2D game is Metroid 6 because Sakamoto said as much in 2021 that he wants the next game to be, a brand new 2D game rather than another remake. So the Super Metroid remake, presumably that's not the next 2D game on the cards, and it is Metroid 6. I feel strongly that this is the year for it, but on the other hand, Nintendo just put out Prime 4. Would they really put out Metroid 6 like so soon? I'm of two minds about it. I'm conflicted. And then as I said, Prime 5 is at least 2030, right? So, what do we get in the meantime? Does 2026 go by? Do we go the rest of this year with no Metroid news? Do we go through half of 2027 without any Metroid news? It looks that way because look at the lack of Nintendo Directs lately. And not only that, but the lack of first-party games. Almost all of the games on Switch 2 at the moment are either fucking Switch 2 edition ports of Switch 1 games or they're third-party games. Switch 2 is 6 months into its life and it's had 5 exclusives? That's so minimal. And we have no real indication that 2026 is going to improve because all the rumors and leaks say that 2026 is going to be pretty barren for first-party games and it's going to be upheld by third parties. And considering that we've had 2 indie showcases in the last month, it's looking that way. So not only is it looking like we're going to be lacking Metroid for the next year and a half to 2 years, it also looks like we're just going to be lacking first-party games full stop for a while. And obviously with a Metroid game having just released, it's not high on the priority to put out another one immediately. And they're probably going to wait as long as possible before announcing any new games. So it's weird. I suppose the biggest part of it all is that throughout the Switch generation, we had a Metroid game to look forward to, What I mean is that, we went through 6 years after Other M with nothing until we got Federation Force. Then after Federation Force, with the cliffhanger ending, we were like, okay, Prime 4 is going to happen at some point, but as of that current moment, we didn't know what was on the horizon. 2017, they shadow drop Samus Returns and they announced Prime 4. Samus Returns kind of teased Metroid Dread. And even with that tease, it still kind of came out of nowhere in 2021, right? Whereas when Metroid Prime 4 was delayed and restarted, even though that was apparently a lie, which I'll probably do another video talking about that. So, the last 8 years, even though Metroid Dread was basically an out-of-nowhere announcement, as was Prime Remaster, Prime 4 was still always, there. Even when we didn't have any Metroid games in the immediate future to play, that one was always... We always had the knowledge that one was coming. Now that game has come, and it's I guess you could say we know the next 2D game's coming, but it's not even announced, right? So for the first time in 8 years, 9 years, I suppose, we don't have a Metroid game looming over us, so it feels very weird. Please tell me I'm not the only one feeling this, right? Surely, surely some of you are getting the same kind of vibe, feeling from this strange situation, coupled with the fact that Prime 4 disappointed many of us. It means the wait for the next game suddenly becomes more prominent. Because we're not satisfied with Prime 4, you know, we very quickly were like, okay, that came out, that disappointed, what's next? You know? Instead of savoring that game and just absorbing everything about it and taking it in, we consumed it, and now we're just anxiously twiddling our thumbs waiting for the next game. Is not how this situation should have ended, but that's the way it went, unfortunately. And it's funny, for like, even with my disappointments with Prime 4, even though I loved the game, I mean, I'm still like playing. I'm on my 5th playthrough. So I mostly play Switch games handheld, right? I dabbled a bit in TV mode with Prime 4 for motion controls during like one of my first 2 playthroughs. Right now I'm playing the game entirely on TV. My TV doesn't have HDR 4K, but tweaking with the settings, even without 4K and HDR, I've still managed to get the game looking pretty damn good. Like, just adjusting the color and the contrast settings and everything on TV, just messing around with making the image quality more dynamic has just created this it just makes the game look really stunning, which has me kind of bewildered, because I'm like, oh my god, this is what it's like without 4K. Imagine it in 4K. So yeah, I'm just enjoying it with better visuals, if that makes sense. Mostly, I suppose part of it is I'm kind of deluding myself in a way. I'm like, okay, maybe it's not as disappointing as I remember. If I play through it again, I have a feeling quite a number of you probably share that sentiment. But yeah, that's kind of all I have for this video. I wanted to put out something sooner, as I said, but I found it really difficult to settle on one thing to talk about. And Prime 4's story was so non-existent and inconsequential to the franchise that there's nothing to talk about, It's so bare bones in terms of story. There's no like deeper lore to unravel or implications for the franchise. Outside of, I guess, the timeline placement, which we all know Nintendo is full of shit. Like, Metroid Prime 4 is not after Super Metroid. There is no forsaken way in hell that is remotely possible. Why does she have the Prime 3 gunship? Bear in mind, the game is in 20x9 and Federation Force was 20x6, so that's 3 years of her using that ship instead of her typical gunship, from Prime 2 and from the 2D games. But then, obviously, you got the whole thing with space pirates and Metroids being a thing, and, no reference whatsoever to the events of Super Metroid, despite it supposedly taking place afterwards. So, I think they just messed up. I think the only reason they put it in 20x9 was because they wanted a sufficient time gap from Federation Force, so they could justify Psylocke having his own army that he spent those years gathering resources, right? But that's the thing. He doesn't even really have much of an army in the game, so it's a moot point. The game could take place in 20x6 or 20x7 and nothing would change. Likewise, it might as well be before Super Metroid, because it just doesn't make any sense afterwards. But yeah, it's a whole thing. Anyone who knows anything about Metroid and its timeline knows that statement from Nintendo, like, it's bullshit. Like, there's no conceivable way. But I digress. I'm going on a tangent. I'll try to get back to more regular uploads now. As I said, it's just difficult. The game hasn't left me with much enthusiasm or excitement, so I really feel like I'm winging it. I'm improvising on the spot, essentially. But look, it's the 40th anniversary of the franchise this year. At least going into summer, I don't know what yet, but I want to do something to acknowledge and celebrate the occasion, even if Nintendo chooses not to. But yeah, that's my rambling thoughts for you as usual. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments section below, and if you have any ideas or any things you'd like to see me discuss in relation to Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, or just the Metroid franchise in general as it stands in 2026, by all means, leave your suggestions down below. And yeah, feel free to share your own experiences with Prime 4 as well. And yeah, with that all said, thank you all for watching and please subscribe. Novus Corvius out.